It's 7 o'clock, time for our regularly scheduled council meeting. Mike, will you call the roll, please?
Collier Wise. Here. Erickson. Here. Holland. Here. Humphrey. Here. Mines. Here. Price. Here. Sorensen.
Here.
Ward. Here. Mayor Powell.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Item 3 are minutes. We have minutes for March 19th regular meeting and March 19th special meeting, and then a March 26th special meeting. Second. Motion and a second to approve all 3 meeting minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 3, adoption of the agenda. John or Mike, any additions or corrections to the agenda? Motion and a second to approve the agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Under visitors to be heard, addressing the council. Persons addressing the council shall use the microphone at the podium. Please raise your hand to be recognized, go to the podium, and state your name and address. For items that are not on the agenda, members of the public may speak under visitors to be heard on any topic not on the agenda. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes, and no decision will be made at this time. For agenda items, public testimony will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item after the subject has been announced by the mayor and explained by staff. Any citizen who wishes may speak one time for 5 minutes on each agenda item. Public testimony will then be closed and the topic will be given to the governing body for possible action. At this point, only city council members and staff may discuss the current agenda item unless a council member moves to allow another person to speak and there's unanimous consent from the council. Questions from council members, however, may be directed to staff or a member of the public through the presiding officer at any time. At this point, we have a proclamation recognizing Transit Week. And Steve, please.
Thanks, Jack. Proclamation, Public Transit Week. Whereas Vermillion Public Transit is the public transit provider for Vermillion, South Dakota and the surrounding area. Whereas public transportation plays a significant role in the economic strength and independence of our community. And whereas public transportation encourages and provides opportunity for coordination with unlimited additional programs to avoid the duplication of transportation services and expenses. And whereas Vermillion Public Transit drove 80,265 miles and provided 67,164 passenger trips in 2017. And whereas public transportation professionals deserve recognition of continued and expanded public transportation, strengthening our communities through employment opportunities, medical care, youth transportation, and maintaining an active role in our communities. And whereas the continued strength and integrity of public transportation and its future depends upon educating and maintaining communication with our federal, state, and local decision makers. Now, therefore, we, the governing body of the City of Vermillion, South Dakota, do hereby proclaim April 9th through the 15th, 2018, as Public Transit Week in Vermillion, South Dakota, dated Vermillion, the 2nd day of April, 2018.
Thank you, Steve. Barb, you accept the proclamation?
I appreciate your recognition of Vermillion Public Transit Week. We do our best to serve the community as well we can, and I would like to invite you all to participate in Transit Week by riding transit, checking out our Facebook page. We're going to be having a lot of posts that week, and on April 11th we will have an open house as well. So please come by and have a hot dog or a hamburger.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We have a second proclamation recognizing National Library Week. And Kelsey, please.
Proclamation recognizing National Library Week 2018. Whereas libraries are not just about what they have for people, but what they do for and with people. And whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions, and library workers and librarians fuel efforts to better their communities and schools. And whereas librarians continue to lead the way in leveling the playing field for all who seek information and access to technologies. And whereas libraries and librarians look beyond their traditional roles and provide transformative opportunities for education, employment, entrepreneurship, empowerment, and engagement, as well as new services that connect closely with patrons' needs. And whereas libraries and librarians lead their communities in innovation, providing STEAM programming and access and training for new technologies. And whereas libraries are pioneers supporting democracy and affecting social change, with a commitment to providing equitable access to information for all library users, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status. And whereas libraries lead in working with diverse communities, offering services and educational resources that transform communities, open minds, and promote inclusion and diversity. And whereas libraries, librarians, library workers, and supporters across America are celebrating National Library Week, now, therefore, we, the governing body of the City of Vermillion, South Dakota, proclaim National Library Week, April 8th through 14th, 2018. We encourage all residents to visit the library this week and explore what's new at your library and engage with your librarian. Because of you and our library leaders, libraries transform. Dated at Vermillion, South Dakota, the 2nd day of April, 2018.
Thank you. Will you see that this gets to the library? Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience that has a topic that they wish to bring up that is not on the agenda? Anyone in the audience, a topic that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll turn to the council. Is there anyone on the council has an item that they wish to bring up that's not on the agenda? Okay. Then we'll move to public hearings. Item A, consideration of an application submitted by Carson and Courtney Merkwin for a variance reducing the minimum rear yard setback from 25 feet to 2 feet for the property located at 221 East Main Street. Jose, please.
Thank you. The house located at 221 East Main Street was built in 1925 as a fraternity. The house has 3 floors with 20 bedrooms. 2 of those bedrooms are located on the main floor of the house. City Code adopted in 2008 a new zoning ordinance. The property is now located in the R1 residential district. Fraternity and sorority houses are not an allowable use within this district. Due to the fact that the house existed prior to the adoption of the zoning ordinance in 2008, the use was grandfathered in. When the use of the property is grandfathered, the use is allowed to continue as is, as long as the use is not interrupted for longer than 1 year. The property in question was used as a fraternity until May 2014, when the use was allowed to expire by a previous owner. At the March 26, 2018 meeting, the Planning Commission approved the applicant's request for a conditional use permit to operate a bed and breakfast on the property. The only condition placed in the use was that if a commercial-sized refuse bin was required, the owner would construct a trash enclosure around the refuse bin. The applicant is now wanting to eventually construct a 2-stall garage on the property. The applicant is requesting that the rear yard setback requirement be reduced from 25 feet to 2 feet so that a garage meeting the applicant's criteria can be built. Section 155.100 of the City Code of Ordinance allows for the City Council, acting as a Board of Adjustments, to hear and decide upon petition for variances relating to the strict application of height, area, setback, yard, parking, or density requirement. This would be a setback variance. That's why the board is meeting as a Board of Adjustments. The criteria set in the ordinance that the council or the Board of Adjustments needs to consider would be unnecessary hardships, literal interpretation of the code. The variance requested is a minimum variance that will alleviate the hardship. Granting the variance will comply with the general purpose and intent of the zoning regulations. Exceptions and extraordinary circumstances that may apply to this property. The applicants have also asked the city to vacate the alley adjacent to their property. Jake. To their property. Staff is waiting for the. There it goes. Right now, you can see 221 East Main right there. That's the property in question. To the south of it, you have an alley that goes east to west. Harvard would be the north-south street, and then where the 3 cars are parked above the page would be Main Street. The applicant right now is asking for a variance to place a garage Because right now, we don't know exactly the size of the garage, we're assuming that it's going to be at least a 24 by 24 piece of, I guess, addition to the building. Placing that structure there would essentially be forcing the setback to be at a minimum 7 feet off the alleyway, which would be that middle, that line right there. The applicant is asking for 2 foot from their rear yard, which would be the 2 feet essentially from their rear property line, or 2 feet from the alleyway. We also show the 25-foot line there as a point of reference, so you have a perspective of where the setback line at this point would be. The applicants have asked the city to vacate the alley adjacent to the property. Staff has not received any other petitions back from the applicant for the alley vacation. The applicant is looking to vacate the alley to have more room to place a garage. Due to the number of variables that the possible vacation adds to the variance being requested, staff recommends to make the variance void if the alley is vacated. This would mean that if the variance is granted and the applicant constructs a garage prior to the vacation, the garage would be grandfathered in as non-conforming. However, if the applicant does not construct a garage prior to the vacation of the alley, then he would be able to construct the garage as required by the ordinance, which would be 4 feet from the property line and at least 10 feet from the house. The applicant has also provided the Board of Adjustments with additional information pertaining to their wishes for the property. In that document, there are a few items that they would like to vary. For example, increase in number of rooms, decrease in rear yard setback, allowing a licensed commercial kitchen, number and size of signage, and allowing sales inside of home. With the exception of the increase in number of rooms and the decrease in the rear yard setback, the other items are handled by staff based on what is allowed in the Code of Ordinance. In case that the applicant does not agree with staff decision, he will be able to approach the City Council acting as a Board of Appeals. There's no financial consideration for this. The applicant has already paid the required $150 fee for the variance. In conclusion, administration believes that the variance should be granted, considering that the uniqueness of the structure when being used as a single-family home provides several challenges that most single-family homes do not encounter. However, staff recommends the following conditions be placed on the variance. First, that if the alley is vacated, the variance becomes void, and that the applicant's garage is built, if built, is grandfathered in and made non-conforming. If the garage has not been constructed when the alley is vacated, the applicant would have to build the garage as required by ordinance, so 4 feet from the property line and at least 10 feet from the house. Secondly, that the building official set the rear yard setback during the building permit review. At no point could the rear yard setback be less than 2 feet from the property line. This would allow the applicant and staff to work together and arrive at the minimum variance that would alleviate the hardship without completely eliminating the setback. City Code requires that a public hearing be held on this item, and a concurring vote of 2/3 of the council shall be necessary to approve the variance.
Thank you, Jose. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic? Please.
Hi, my name's Linda Warren, and I don't live in this neighborhood, but I'm associated with a business that owns one of the properties, and I live at 118 North Plum Street. I live in a sorority house, so I understand all the parking and all that those kind of issues. I just have 2 questions because I literally found out about this today. I guess if somebody could explain, maybe in a little bit slower explanation, what is the unnecessary hardship that's being alleviated by this variance? And secondly, you all have probably done some research into this topic, and I admit I haven't done any coming up here tonight, but I would like to know how vacating that alley on that map, how would that affect fire services? Should there be a fire at that property or in the surrounding property neighborhood? I guess those are my 2 main questions.
Thank you. Jose, do you want
So-
to tackle that?
As far as your first question regarding the unnecessary hardship, and I apologize, we don't hand out the memos, I guess, but there is a section in there, and I'll just read off the memo. The house was constructed at a time when the city had no setback requirements, essentially, for structures like this. The setbacks were more than likely set by fire codes at that time, or other local requirements, but not by zoning. We actually got a zoning ordinance back in the 60s. Additionally, the existing structure was constructed with a fraternity sorority in mind in an area where few motor vehicles existed. Now that the zoning ordinance has been changed and the existing structure cannot be used as a fraternity sorority, the structure needs to be renovated to accommodate the needs of a single-family house. That's because there's no fraternities allowed or sororities allowed within the residential district that they're in. One of those needs is typically having a garage. The property owner cannot build a garage within the property and maintaining the minimum setback requirements. So the absence of a garage does not necessarily make the property unusable, but it definitely makes it peculiar, I guess, especially for a size of that type of a house. As far as the alleyway being vacated, at this point, we're not really discussing it. That's something that we included in the memo because the applicant made a mention of that on his application. For the alley to be vacated, it would actually require Mr. Marquand to submit a petition signed by all of the adjacent property owners that utilize that or that front that alleyway, and then the council would actually have to vote on that as well. And I think, if I remember right, I think it also requires a 2/3 majority of the vote. As far as the fire, I don't know. There's all the fire hydrants actually at the corner of the property, or at Main and Harvard, and I don't know if there's one at Main and Forest. So I don't know if there's going to be necessarily any difficulties with a fire apparatus to reach that parcel, I guess, or that property necessarily.
Okay. And let me state, I have no opposition whatsoever to this building being used as a bed and breakfast. I think it's an awesome idea, actually. I was just concerned about getting rid of the alley, what that would do for fire protection for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But you're stating that they have to get the permission of surrounding
They have to get the permission. They actually have to sign a petition from all the adjacent property owners to the alleyway. So including their property, they also have to get 3 additional property owners just to agree to the petition. If one of them says, I don't want to vacate it, then the petition doesn't go any further than that.
All right. Well, my main concern was fire services, so if that's all being addressed and everybody is comfortable with that, you guys have studied this far more than I have, so thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Griggs. Carson, this is my wife, Courtney, and it used to be, well, last week there was
You
a
should be
little,
able to put it there.
is there a
can-
camera anymore?
It's up there right now.
Oh, it's up there right now.
Put it
there. Like it.
Wow.
Seen last time it was up there. Anyway, I wanted to explain to everybody that was concerned about where the parking spots would be and where the garage area would be, just for that explanation. Also, the garage would be a 2-stall garage with a little parking for lawn equipment and such in the back. So a little door to get in the back side. Then two garages there. So fairly simple. We would need a garage to hold things for the bed and breakfast, to keep things nice and neat, and also to keep our cars garaged while things are going on in the bed and breakfast, and keep everything looking good there. The 5 parking spots by code, leaves enough room. We need a half a parking spot per room, so you need 2.5, but obviously you need 3. So we've got enough room for 5 there, just in case they have an extra guest or another car coming to visit. They'd have that there. And then for the added room, are we talking about both right now?
No, we're just talking about the setback.
Okay, so that'd be the setback. The alleyway suggestion, I didn't get all of them signed yet. I haven't had any opposition yet. In fact, the neighbor to the south called me just before the meeting and said that he'd be willing to sign it, and he was kind of excited about it. He wanted to put up a little retaining wall and do some things like that. I have not talked to the rental owner behind us. Just them being a rental owner, it's harder to get a hold of them. They might be from a different town. And then other than that, as you can see, I'm sure the other one's been grandfathered in, but as you can see, there's a lot of, even the house right behind me doesn't have that setback amount. And if you look at neighboring blocks, it's quite common in that neighborhood to have closer garages and whatnot close to the alleyway. And I'm not sure when those were built. They might have been built at that time when it was okay to do it. But seeing that the house is old and it's very large, a garage is necessary. And our purchase agreement it's so necessary that a purchase agreement is contingent on it at this point in time. Anything like that, huh?
Do you, just, why don't you see if we have any questions from, Jose, what would be the reason for a 2 versus 4, or does that do anything to hinder the garage if it's a 4?
I guess the reason, I'm not sure why the request was for a 2-foot variance. I would assume that it's because of the size of the possible garage. But again, not knowing what it was originally going to be, we just went for a 24 by 24. The condition that we were placing the recommendation, I guess, would allow Mr. Merkwin and Farrell Christensen to meet and decide what the actual size of the garage would be, and then determine the actual variance at that point, whether it's 5 feet or 4 feet, but never would it get any closer than 2 feet to the property line.
So it would be a minimum of 2,
Yep.
but it could by agreement be 4.
Could be 4,
or something.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to understand. Council, questions? Thompson?
First of all, thank you for your interest in improving this property, and it's been a talk, it's been a topic around town for probably 10 years. So thank you. And this might be for you, Jose. If the garage has to be within 10 feet in order for it to be used as a parking place?
Yes, the
So
garage.
that still holds then?
Yeah, that would hold in this case. There's 2 reasons for the garage to be within 10 feet of the property. The 10 feet is a magical number because then the garage is considered attached to the structure.
Right.
So if it's 11 feet, let's say, well, then that would be okay, but it's not attached. Now they can't count the parking in the garage. Now, if they attach it and they get the alleyway, then it's non-conforming because I don't have a setback anymore. And
Right.
that's why that
Okay.
grandfather clause, I guess, in the recommendation.
The other question, thank you. The other question I have is, have we lately done any sort of traffic count on that alley? I know people who have used it, not frequently, but still use it because it's a nice shortcut to reduce traffic on Main Street.
I guess we don't typically do counts on alleyways unless requested by neighbors. And to answer your question, we have not done any. I know that the traffic has, there's been a large decline in traffic since the fraternity ceased to exist, but we haven't, I guess recently we haven't had any complaints or any concerns from anybody around the neighborhood regarding traffic.
Yeah, I wasn't concerned about it. I just wondered if we knew.
No.
The other thing is, I feel like I need to make a point that the location of a fire hydrant is one thing. How much hose you have to pull out to reach the pumping truck is another one. So it's certainly within distance.
Oh, yeah.
The more hose you pull, the more work it is, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you need to put the fire out, you put the fire out. But simply the location of a hydrant is one part of the factor, so.
Thank you. Rich?
If the variance is granted, do you still want to remove the alleyway?
Excuse me?
If the variance is granted, do you still want to remove the alleyway?
That is something we'll explore, yes. That is, yeah, I think I will ask, I'll pursue that to remove the alleyway.
And you stipulated, Jose, that one would negate the other, is that correct?
Yeah, but it all depends on when Mr. Merkwin builds a garage.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council members? Motion a second to approve the variance. Are you ready to vote?
Does that include Jose's recommendations to your motion?
Would we state?
The recommendations being
The
clarify those again? Stated no.
Essentially, the garage being grandfathered in, if you get the variant or the alleyway vacated. And then the second one would have been I want to make sure, that the setback would actually be set during a meeting between you and the building official. No less than 2, but it could be 5 feet, depending on the size of your garage, essentially.
Yeah. As long as-
Further discussion?
I'm sorry, I need to understand what the motion includes. Does it include the recommendation of staff, including however the following conditions? Is that part of the motion?
Yes, and the second.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We got the 2/3. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item B, consideration of an application submitted by Carson and Courtney Merkwit for a variance increasing the number of bedrooms from 4 to 5 for a bed and breakfast located at 221 East Main Street. Jose, again, please.
Well, now you know the backstory.
Yeah, you don't have to do that.
Essentially, the applicant, with this application, the applicant is requesting the number of bedrooms to be increased from 4 to 5. The ordinance right now is 4. A bed and breakfast is a conditional use, as you already guessed. The applicant received that conditional use for a 4-bedroom bed and breakfast at the previous Planning Commission meeting. This is set by ordinance 155.80 of the code. The applicant is asking the Board of Adjustment to increase the number to 5 bedrooms based on the definition for bed and breakfast establishment set by the state of South Dakota under Administrative Rule number 44020601. This rule defines a bed and breakfast as having no more than 5 rental units. The city did contact CCOG, the city's planning district that we belong to, for advice. They did advise that the city can set a number of bedrooms allowed within the bed and breakfast in Vermillion to any number according to them. However, after discussing this with the city attorney, he strongly recommends that that number of bedrooms does not exceed 5. So we can have 4, we can have 3, but that we should not have 7 or 10 or anything of that sort, that we should just cap it at 5 if we're going to be making any changes. The ordinance requires council acting as a Board of Adjustment to look at the same criteria as previously, so necessary hardship, the interpretation of the code, variances, so forth. The applicant has already paid the variance fee of $150. Conclusion, staff believes that the variance should not be granted due to the fact that there is no true hardship being rectified. The building's use as a bed and breakfast was already approved by the city's planning commission at their March 26th meeting. The only difference is that the number of rooms is capped at 4 by the locally adopted ordinance, which is stricter than the state's recommendation. The board should remember that the primary use of the property is that of a single-family residence and not of a business. The ordinance allows for the use as a bed and breakfast, but this is a secondary to the secondary use of the residential use. Again, city code requires a public hearing and a concurring vote of 2/3 of the members of the council.
Thank you. Any comments from the audience on this particular item? Sir?
My name's Aaron Kirkhoff. I was just kind of curious
What's your name, please?
Aaron Kirkhoff. Just kind of curious the reason why they're limiting the number of rooms, if it's okay. I just was kind of just more definition.
Why it's limited
Yeah,
to
why
4?
the city lawyer said it not to have it like more than 5.
Well, the state's administrative rule sets the maximum to 5.
Okay.
So we probably shouldn't go against that rule.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily want to set it at 6. Right now, the ordinance sets it at 4, which you can go below the I guess the state's.
No, I was just
suggestion.
curious. I was just making sure just if there was something else into their safety or whatever.
No, I mean,
Well-
I'm sure we have it at 4 for various reasons. I couldn't tell you what they may be necessarily or what the original intent of having it at 4.
Okay, fair enough. I just figured I'd ask. All right, thank you.
Further discussion?
Carson again. I did a little spreadsheet of what our, kind of a brief P&L here. I'm sure Jack will see some errors, but if we have 5 bedrooms for rent on the top versus 4 bedrooms for rent, so we intend to be a higher dollar bed and breakfast, so we don't have to be as occupied to make a bit of a profit, but we are going to put some money into the place, so we have to get that money back in some sense of the matter. But my intention is to at least pay the mortgage, and or at least part of it, right? So at 5 and at 50% occupancy, which is about average for a bed and breakfast in the nation, would be around the break-even point, $3,000 above water. So that would be okay with me. I'd be satisfied with that. But if I go down to 4, I won't be making the mortgage. The gross margin will be less than the mortgage. So to me, it's you know, if I'm going to do it, I do want to make a little bit of money. I do want it to be fun and a nice thing for the community, but at the same point in time, 4 at my pricing model won't make it, and 5 has potential of making it. So,
Okay.
So that's the.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the audience?
Hi, Andrea Ronning, and I'm representing the Merkwins in this deal. I do want to notify the council that so far we're passing all the hurdles. However, the contract is contingent on this becoming a bed and breakfast, on us meeting the state number of rooms. So it's very important that we pass this one as well if we want to see this go to a bed and breakfast, which I'm sure we all do, because as Chris can say, she's had this property on the market for 3 years with nothing. So whatever comes into this property will probably need certain leniencies down the road for whatever it becomes. So I just ask that you grant this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
Hi, I'm Chris O'Connor from Dakota Realty. I've had this property listed for over 3 years. It's become an eyesore. There's been an awful lot of interest, but nobody's come up with a brainstorm of what to do with it. It's not easy to sell a single-family home with 20 bedrooms. I mean, we just don't have those people that are looking for 6,000 square feet, no garage, 300 feet of sidewalk to scoop snow on. They need a garage, they need things. So whoever would buy this property would probably be in front of you guys asking for a variance. These guys are looking to have a $500,000 property here. It will widen our tax base. It will be a great benefit to Vermillion to have this on Main Street, a beautiful facility. We ask for your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Help me understand now, are we talking about allowing 5? Is that
Yep, you would be bumping it from 4 to 5.
from 4 to 5? So that's what's before us, is to go to 5 bedrooms. Okay? Please.
I think that the difficulty of this property is really one of the, I look at the variance process, and although I understand what Jose is saying about whether this meets undue hardship, to me, the uniqueness of this property and the difficulty of filling it seems like the perfect fit for our variance process. I've been with a number of groups that looked at this property in an attempt to make it a bunch of different things and could never make it work. I think that there's no way that anyone is going to buy this and be able to use it in the way it is without possibly tearing it down. This is an opportunity to move it forward, and so with that, I would support granting the variance.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? You just did.
Maybe this is more towards what Mr. Kirchhoff's question was, but when the ordinance was set at 4 bedrooms, fewer than the state maximum of 5. Is there any idea why the city chose to limit it to 4, or is there any information about the discussion that happened when that ordinance was created?
I don't know if, I guess I'm not privy to any conversation that was before even I started working here. I would assume that that it was set at 4 trying to limit the businesses, I guess, or business use within residential districts. Otherwise, you know, there's in that ordinance for the bed and breakfast, there's other items in there that if you look at them, they try to curtail the use of the bed and breakfast as a rental as well by setting the number of days that you can stay there in a row and so forth. So I think, I'm assuming that it was a combination of both, trying to keep businesses from residential districts and then also trying to allow for some uses as businesses by having 4. But it's a tough question to answer because, I mean, obviously we want this to work out, but there's really no true hardship. I mean, I understand that's privy to the council's decision, but it's a balancing act, I guess.
Rich, please.
Based on this, the rules by the state, because I have friends that have bed and breakfast, as soon as you go up above 5, it becomes what they classify as like a hotel. There's many, many more rules, many more things that apply. So at the time, I don't know what date it is or time it is, we chose 4. That may have been the state at that time, but I'd like to propose that we change our ordinance to 5 to match the state.
That'll be a separate.
Yeah, it'd be a separate thing, but I fully think that we should allow 5.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tom?
I too would like to comment on this. I have a question, though, for perhaps John. The information sheet that's attached to this memo is the Coyote B&B background, and was that presented to the Planning Commission?
Yep.
That information? They saw all of this?
Yep.
Okay. Given that they've seen it, given that it states that this is part of a business plan that's contingent on this real estate deal, and it's proposed as a business, I would consider it a hybrid, both residential and business. And I think if you have trouble making your mortgage, that's reason enough to grant the 5 rooms. So I'll support the motion.
Further discussion? The motion is to allow 5 bedrooms, and that's it, right? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? We got the 2/3. Actually, we got 3/3. Thank you. Good luck, people. Item 7, we have no old business, so we'll turn to item 8. A permit for consumption but not sale of alcoholic beverage on public property for Vermillion Public Library Books and Brews at 18 Church Street on June 9, July 13, and August 17, 2018. And Mike, please.
Rachel Langdon, on behalf of the Vermillion Public Library, has submitted a request for a permit to consume alcoholic beverages on public property for their Books and Brew event to be held in the area behind the library from 7 to 9 on June 9, July 13th, and August 17th. If the weather doesn't cooperate, the event will be moved inside to the Kozak room. A copy of the request is attached. The City Council may permit the consumption but not sale of alcoholic beverages on property owned by the public as provided by state statute. The library has held these Books and Brew event, and they had a tech and toddy event last year without any incidents. Administration recommend approval of the special permit to allow consumption and not sale of alcoholic beverages at the library on the date stated.
Thank you, Mike. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment on this item? Seeing none, council? Motion is second to approve the permit. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item B, permit for consumption of alcohol in the Cafe Brûlée Furniture Zone Use Permit Area, Market Street sidewalks as it abuts the building at 24 West Main Street. John, please.
Thank you. This is an item that you routinely have seen each year since 2013. City staff can approve the use of the public sidewalk on the west side of Cafe Brûlée for what's called a furniture zone use. They would establish, as they have in past years, 6 tables for outside dining. Staff has approved the use of the sidewalk in the manner. It's the same thing as proposed in previous years, but the decision on whether or not the consumption of alcohol can take place within that furniture zone use area is the sole discretion of the City Council. So the item before you this evening is whether or not you want to allow a permit for the consumption in the Cafe Brûlée sidewalk zone use area, as has been done in previous years. I would note that in previous years, the City Council has also limited the sale or the consumption of alcohol during Dakota Days weekend.
Thank you, John. Anyone in the audience on this one? Council?
Approval with the exception of the days in the past. Second.
Motion is second. I would like to comment on that, and that's item F, where the second bullet says there's a strong chance that this may occur the weekend of Dakota Days. Why don't we just have it isn't allowed on Dakota Days? Is that, Jim, can we make that change? So that there's no question that it is not allowed on Dakota Days. We don't have to come back for that, okay? With that, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item D, explanation of possible downtown business improvement district. And John, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed C. Excuse me. Why these gentlemen are here. Sorry about that. Request to temporarily remove some public parking spots from East Main Street, Center Street, and the public parking lot located on west side of Center Street to allow for construction to continue at 2 East Main Street. Jose, please.
Thank you. Pitts Corporation from Mitchell is working with the VCDC, and on the VCDC's behalf, they have requested to vacate for the city to allow them to use several parking stalls along Main Street, Center Street, and the parking lot across Center Street from City Hall. This is all to work on their building, the VCDC building. So essentially, here's the VCDC building that they're working on right now. They're requesting for these 4 spaces along Main Street, these 6 spaces along Center Street, and these 6 spaces in the parking lot, city-owned parking lot. Section 9609 of the Code of Ordinances allows the city engineer to grant the utilization, I guess, or permission of 20 persons to store materials in the road upon adjacent to the lot, which the building has been constructed. However, this permission is only good for 6 months. They have essentially on March 16th, the 5-month was up, so we allowed a month extension or time there for the applicant to submit a request to the council if that was required. The applicant did formally request this extension. They're asking from March 16th to August 23rd, which is roughly another additional 5 months. The extension request is due to unforeseen structural issues within the building, which have added to the scope of the project and also increased the time required for approval of the changes. The applicant is requesting the same spaces that were previously allowed. Staff recommends granting the extension to utilize above-mentioned areas as already been allowed for storage of material and equipment needed for construction of 2 East Main Street until August 23rd, 2018.
Does that include the sidewalk, or was that longer than the 5 months?
No, that includes the sidewalk in front of those parking stalls. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anyone in the audience that wish to comment on this? Seeing none, council? Motion is second to approve the request. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks, Jose. Thanks. Now, item D, explanation of possible downtown business improvement district. John? No, I'm sorry, Jake.
You actually get me this time.
The other Jake.
All right, so here to talk a little bit about downtown streetscape improvements. This is something that I think there's been quite a bit of interest in the community for a number of years. The most recent push to do something downtown was in 2016. This resulted in a conceptual plan that I'm sure many of you have seen, the long poster we've set up. At the time, I think, from what I've heard, the discussion stalled because money. It's great to talk about ideas, but when it comes to paying for them, that's where that one stalled out. This plan would call for putting street trees, planters, bump outs to increase pedestrian safety, better ADA accessibility on the crossings, new sidewalks, accent bands, pedestrian lighting, quite a bit going on here. And this is something that in the 2018 budget, City Council put $1 million of second penny funds towards this. $1 million is quite a bit of money, but in the case of a project like this, it's not going to cover it. And so at the time, we knew that we're going to need to get additional funding. So staff, we're looking at different funding sources. We formed the Downtown Streetscape Improvement Committee, made up of downtown property owners and some other downtown users of space to kind of examine the issue again. It was very helpful for us and staff to kind of bounce some ideas off community members to start bringing back towards City Council. A few things we came out with. It sounds like there's still a lot of community support for that original 2016 plan. There's not a whole lot that would change. There's some discussion on maybe what the extent, the scope of the project would be, but I think overall, I would say the community is very excited about this plan, but the sticking point, as with many things, is going to be the funding part of it. And it sounded like the committee was open to the idea of the creation of a downtown business improvement district as part of the funding solution. So what would that look like? We currently have one business improvement district in Vermillion, bid number 1. This case is a little bit different. This is where we put the $2 per night occupancy tax on occupied hotel rooms, and we use that mainly for promotion of the community. In this case, what we'd be doing with the downtown bid, the proposal would be to essentially draw a line on a map. Within that boundary, we would assess at a certain rate to be determined all of this, but those funds, the bid board would look at, we'd have to create a new bid board, but the board would look at what possibly to do with this money. Most likely it would go towards help pay for these downtown improvements. The general idea behind this sort of thing is that when you're making an improvement that specifically benefits one part of town over another, maybe that the people in that area should pay a little bit more. They're seeing businesses would be seeing more customers, they'd be seeing increase in property values. So this is something the community has already paid $1 million towards with the possibility of more, but this would just be essentially having the property owners contribute specifically towards this. Don, if you could I put together a little bit of a tentative schedule for what the next steps of this process could be like. Should have a slide for that. In the meantime, just to highlight it, at this time we're not asking for any action. At our next council meeting on the 16th, we'd be bringing forward to you, and there's quite a few steps to this, we'd be bringing forward a resolution to create proposed boundaries of a business improvement district. And so at that time we wouldn't be committed to, there we go. At that time we wouldn't be committed to anything. All this would do would be essentially set aside, create a business improvement district that could look into this issue, better study it, go out into the community, get more feedback. We'd appoint, the council would appoint the members of that bid board. Eventually they would study it, bring a report back to council. Council, if they were interested, could create a resolution of intent to create a business improvement district, later create an ordinance establishing the business improvement district. This is all a very lengthy process. It's all set out in state statute. So this is something where procedurally we're just getting the ball rolling here. And just in closing, a few key points. The project specifics and the amounts of money that would be assessed in the bid is totally up for discussion at this time. Really just creating the bid would allow us to study this issue more thoroughly. Again, it would not commit us to creating a bid at all in the future. We would allow plenty of opportunity and time for soliciting public feedback. It's built into this process, and we would go out of our way to make sure that this was something that people in the community could support. And just on a staff note, creation of a business improvement district is something that we do not take lightly. We do understand that this is asking for more money from people who own property in this area. So it's not something we take lightly. It's something we really appreciate. At the same time, we believe it's something worth investing more in our community for. So at this time, not requesting any action. I'd be happy to take any questions, or if I don't have an answer, things that we can address in the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Jake. Any comments or questions from the council? Tom?
Thank you. I've kind of been anxious to hear about more of this, and I know some of these members of the committee have been too, but are we to understand that the proposed boundaries you come up with that will be announced, those within those boundaries would be subject to the assessment?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And according to your memo, we don't have, the $1 million will not cover the entire cost of the project. So how short are we, and how much might the assessments be in a range if you have it, or maybe it's premature?
It's, at this time, I don't know that there's a number. A lot of it will depend on what form of that, project we end up going with. If we scale it down, we're certainly looking at a less expensive project, but the numbers we were working with were anywhere from 2.3 million to 2.6 or 7. I would say 3 million to be safe. We're not expecting that, we have the million and second penny from the city. We're going to make up that other 2 million. I would not feel comfortable proposing that amount. Just looking at this, we have a few funds within the city that we could see adding towards this. I believe there's about $250,000 from Light and Power that would go towards pedestrian scale lighting. There's around $50,000 for stormwater improvements. This is something council could put further money towards, but no, I only see the bid as part of the process to generate funds into it. I would not expect the bid to cover the remaining cost. I believe that would be an undue burden to the folks in that part of town.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry if that wasn't a complete answer. I don't have a number yet. That's kind of, as this process goes forward, I think we'll have plenty of opportunity to discuss what that might look like.
And there have been at least one project in the past that's helped one certain neighborhood that nobody here wanted to assess, but maybe this is different.
Further discussion from the council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Jake.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work. Item 9, bid openings, fuel quotes, Mike.
The fuel quote sheet should be there. It's on your monitors. First quote is 4,300 gallons of unleaded gasoline, 10% ethanol. Stern oil is $2.53.5 cents. Item 2 is 1,000 gallons of unleaded gasoline regular, $2.28.38 cents. Item 3 is 3,000 gallons of number 2 diesel fuel dyed, $2.27.36 cents. Item 4 is 1,000 gallons of diesel fuel number 2 clear, $2.58 cents. Second quotes from Brunick Service in item 1, $2.34, item 2, $2.55, item 3, $2.32, item 4, $2.60. Brunick's is low on 1 and Stern is low on 2, 3, and 4.
Thank you, Mike. Council?
Move approval of the low bids as shown on the chart.
Motion a second to approve the low bids. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Bale bag bids. Jose, please.
Thank you. The solid waste department uses landfill bale bags on its daily operations to put garbage in them and put the garbage in the landfill, I guess. It saves on the con cover and so forth. The bags are capable of essentially containing up to 2,800 pounds of solid waste. Bidding is required by state law for this type of material when materials exceed $25,000 for the bid. The material is estimated to cost around $60,000. Staff sent the bid information to 4 possible bidders that supply landfill baler bags. The city opened bids on March 28th. 2 bids were received. The low bid was from Global Packaging Solutions for $54,900. The high bid was from Accent Packaging for $56,700. The 2018 Joint Powers landfill budget includes funding for the landfill bale bags. Administration recommends purchasing the landfill bale bags from Global Packaging Solutions for $54,900 and allowing staff to issue the purchase order for the material.
Thanks, Jose. Council? Motion a second to approve the low bid. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item C, mower bids. Jose, again, please.
Thank you. The mowers that were declared surplus at the February 5th and February 20th meeting were tried to be sold this last month. The city typically cannot accept bids less than 90% of the appraised value. The surplus property committee of the council appraised the vehicles for $2,200 apiece. Bids were advertised in the local paper. Additionally, the city staff spoke to several parties at a regional golf course conference held in Omaha. This has proven to be effective in previous years. However, this year the city did not receive any bids on the 2 mowers. Staff will now contact the Toro dealer to see if they're interested in purchasing the mowers. Future revenue from the sales it's going to be going to the surplus equipment fund. Administration recommends allowing staff to continue advertising the equipment for sale. If they do not sell at 90% of the appraised value, staff will approach the city council to have the equipment reappraised.
Thanks, Jose. Council? Motion is second to approve the report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks, Jose.
Thank you.
Item 10, City Manager's Report. John, please.
Thank you. During the 2018 budget process, the City Council approved the start of a 5-year project to convert our electric and water meters to what's AMI, or Advanced Metering Infrastructure. Last week we sent letters to properties. This first year we're going to work on residences that are south of Lewis Street, as well as those that are east of Crawford Road. The electric meter work will go pretty quickly as they can do all that externally, but they will need to, in most cases, go into the residences and address the water meter that's located inside that property and make the changes. So just a kind of an awareness that that project is beginning here, and that we hope to, over the next 5 years, complete all these meters in the community. Today, we finally reached another goal that we converted to the city's new website. The web address remains the same, www.vermillion.us. There's still items that are being added to this, but it's a project that's been several months, or probably about half a year in the making, in terms of getting all that converted and that sort of thing. So Jake and Marty really deserve a lot of the credit for the hands-on work to get it to this point, as well as different people within their departments. Next Monday at 5:30, the Planning Commission will meet. At this point in time, there's 2 items on the agenda. One is that conditional use permit for the Joplin Street townhomes. That's been continued from different previous meetings, as individuals weren't able to make the meeting or additional information was required, as well as the subdivision ordinance update as part of that agenda. Annually, per our wastewater bond debt service, staff takes a look at the domestic water usage, the average of that over our winter months. That's reviewed to make sure that we have adequate revenue that's coming in to make our debt service payments, as well as the operations for our wastewater entity. And then typically, if there's a need for a change, that increase or that decrease is proposed to the council. After reviewing all that, the staff recommendation is not to change the wastewater rates in May, as you've typically done in previous years. We do have a vacancy coming up here on our Vermillion Housing Authority Board. The balance of the term runs until June of 2021. Interested individuals are asked to complete an expression of interest form. We ask that those forms be turned in by noon on April 12th, with the City Council making an appointment at the April 16th meeting. And then included with your City Council packet were 2 raffle notifications. The USD Health Science Department, they will be selling $5 tickets on April 14th at the Breathe for Michaela event. The prize is a basket of oils and soaps valued at $30, and the proceeds will be used for a donation to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. The second raffle notification was the USD American Indian Science and Engineer Society. They will be selling $1 tickets during the USD powwow on April 7th and 8th. There is a 50-50 drawing, with the proceeds being used to assist with outreach activities to area high schools. The outreach activities include bringing Native American students to USD to become familiar with university.
Thank you, John. Any comments or questions for our city manager? Tom, please.
I have a comment. If you're not familiar at all with a wachipi or a powwow, I urge everyone to just, if you've never been to one, go. It's a very nice social event. I also am familiar with ACES, the American Indian Science and Engineer Society. It's an excellent program, and it's quite old, actually. It goes back a number of years, so this is for a good cause. That's my comment. Thanks.
Okay. Further comments, questions for our city manager? Seeing none, we'll then move to Stump Mike with invoices payable. Mike, I have a couple that I thought it might be just helpful for our public to understand what's happening, like number 25, where we're spending money for relay testing. Is that with regard to our new?
That's for the new substation as part of the construction project that was contracted out for the testing of that equipment before it was put online.
And then 100, is that part of that same transmission system?
Yeah, that was the contract for the transmission line that went from University Road over to the substation.
Thank you. I just thought it might be helpful for our citizens to understand where that money is going. Any other comments or questions for Mike?
Wait.
I would move approval of number 1.
Oh, yeah. Oh, let me make a comment on number 1. You folks know this, that when I go to meetings under the auspices of Missouri River Energy Services, they can't pay me directly for my expenses. So what I do is submit a bill to them, and then they pay the city, and then the city pays me. So it's no cost to the city for my attending those meetings. So thank you. A motion to second to pay number 1. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oh, I'm sorry, opposed? All right, how about the rest of the bills? Second. Motion and a second to pay the remaining bills. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, we have several items on the consensus agenda. Item A, set a public hearing date of April 16th for a special daily malt beverage and wine license for the Vermillion Area Chamber of Commerce and Development Company on or about May 10 at the Prentice Park Baseball Field. Item B, set a public hearing date of April 16th, 2018 for a special daily malt beverage and wine license for the Vermillion Area Chamber of Commerce and Development Company on or about April 19, July 12, July 19, July 26, August 2nd, August 9th, August 16, and August 23rd on Rodigan Plots, half block of Market Street south of Main Street, and Main Street as it abuts the plots for Thursdays on the plots events. Item C, set a public hearing date of April 16, 2018 for a special permit to exceed permissible sound levels by no more than 50% for the Vermillion Area Chamber and Development Company on or about April 19, July 12, July 19, July 26, August 2, August 9, August 16, and August 23rd from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Rodigan Plots, half block of Market Street south of West Main Street and West Main Street as it abuts the plots for Thursdays on the plots. And item D, set a public hearing date of April 16, 2018 for a special daily malt beverage and wine license for the Vermillion Downtown Cultural Association on or about April 20 and 21, 2018 at 4 West Main, Vermillion Theater for a fundraising event. A motion and a second to approve the consensus agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries, Steve. Second. Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We're adjourned. Thank you.